Hello and welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial I will show you how to make a friendship bracelet and how to create diamonds, X's, chevrons, and for that I will use these three colors. So I will use black, orange and yellow. So I have chosen these colors. I cut a length of about from this point to this point. The length is about 70 centimeters, that is about 28 inches. And I cut the double length so that I can make a loop over here. So let's begin by making the loop. So the loop will be from here until about here. So I will grab the ends of the loop and I will start twisting the yarns in order to create the actual loop. Now I have twisted, I will superpose the two ends of my loop, and now when I let go you will see that the two twisted loops will twist around one another. And here at this point where the twisted part ends, I will make a knot. So an overhand knot, a simple knot like this. And I have created my loop. As you can see, this is what the loop looks like. And now let's start making the bracelet. I will grab the yarns with the clamp and I will order the yarns. So I will order them like in the case of the chevron bracelet. So I'll put the colors in the mirror. So as you can see, the black, the neutral color is on the outside, and orange and yellow, the analogous colors, are on the inside, and the left side and the right side are in the mirror. And now let's start creating some chevrons. In order to make the chevrons, I will take the black yarn and create the shape of the number 4 with the orange yarn. I'll put my finger under the orange yarn, grab with my nail the black yarn, and I will create the first forward knot. So whenever we make these bracelets for beginners, we shall make double knots, not one but two knots. So let's make another forward knot. So I'll make the number 4 like this, take the knot out through the loop, and I have created the second forward knot. On the yellow yarn, again I will make one forward knot and the second forward knot. And I brought forward the black yarn, I brought it forward from here, from the outside, here into the middle. So it went forward by making forward knots. Now I want to bring this yarn from the right side, the black yarn, to bring it backwards so that it also gets into the middle of my yarns. For that reason I will make backward knots. What is a backward knot? The number 4 in the mirror. So as you can see, I created the shape of the number 4 like this, but in the mirror I'll put my finger under the yellow yarn, grab with my nail the black yarn, take it out through the loop like this, and I make the first backward knot. And then, as I said, we shall make double knots. The second knot will also be a backward knot, so I grab the yarn like this, take it out through the loop, and create the second backward knot. Now I moved the black yarn backward from the outside place to towards the center here. And now I'll make again two backward knots, 1 and 2, and I moved the yarn backwards from here to this place, backwards, by making backward knots. And now I will make in the middle here, to close the chevron, I will make 2 forward knots, 1 and 2. So in the middle here you can choose whether you want to make 2 forward knots, 2 backward knots, a forward and a backward knot, or a backward and a forward knot. So here in the middle you have the free choice to make what kind of knots you like. So I made 2 forward knots. Now let's do the same with the orange yarn. So I'll make forward knots on this side, on the left side, 2 forward knots, again 2 forward knots. I brought the orange yarn in the middle. Now I'll make backward knots, 2 backward knots, 1 and 2, again 2 backward knots, 1 and 2, and in the middle, as I said, I will make 2 forward knots. But if you like, you can make 2 backward knots, backward, forward, forward, backward, as you like. So now I have created the second chevron. Now let's make the yellow chevron, doing the same steps. 1 forward knot, 2 forward knots, 1 forward knot, 2 forward knots. I brought the yellow yarn in the middle. Now 1 forward knot, 2 forward knots, 1 forward knot, backward knot. Sorry, these are backward knots. 1 backward knot, 2 backward knots. So on this side forward knots, on this side backward knots. So I made 2 backward knots on this yarn, 2 backward knots on this other yarn, and my yellow yarn is in the middle, and now I'm going to make 1 forward knot and another forward knot. And we have created 3 chevrons. The black chevron, the orange chevron, and the yellow chevron. So let's repeat. On the left side we make 2 forward knots on each yarn. On the right side we make 2 backward knots on each yarn, and with the middle cords here we can make either forward knots or backward knots, or a combination of forward and backward knots, but always 2 knots. And now let's continue. So I will continue making some chevrons. 1 and 2 forward knots, 1 and 2 forward knots, 1 and 2 backward knots, 1 and 2 backward knots, and 2 forward knots, 1 and 2, like this. Let's continue. 1 and 2 forward knots, 1 and 2 forward knots, 1 and 2 backward knots, one and 2 backward knots, and in the middle 1 and 2 forward knots. And with a yellow yarn, 1 and 2 forward knots, 1 and 2 forward knots, and here 1 and 2 backward knots, 1 and 2 backward knots, so as you can see, let's make 1 and 2 forward knots to create the yellow chevron, and as you can see now, the yarns are ordered according to their colors. So whenever you work with yarns, you must be careful not to mix the colors, because otherwise your design will look mixed up. So we have done the chevrons, as you can see now. So we have a black, an orange, a yellow, a black, an orange, and a yellow chevron. And now let's create another design. I will make 1 and 2 forward knots, 1 and 2 forward knots. So we shall begin by making another chevron, and then we shall continue the chevron with another design. 1 backward knot, the second backward knot, and 1 and 2 backward knots. And here in the middle, the 2 forward knots, 1 and 2 forward knots, like this. So so far we have made the chevron, and now let's create another design. I will first of all make a forward knot, so the number 4, like this, a forward knot here with the orange yarn, and then I will make on the same yellow yarn with the orange yarn, I will make a backward knot, like this. So this way. And again with this other yarn, orange yarn, I will make a backward knot and a forward knot. So as you can see, when you make a backward and a forward knot, your yarns, the yarn goes from this place to this place here, so it moves forward, and then with the backward knot it moves back. So this way you will keep your orange yarns on the margin. And now I will take the black yarn and create an inverted chevron. So I will make backward knots on this side, on the left side. So I will make 1 backward knot, the second backward knot, like this, one backward knot, and the second backward knot this way. And now I have created a part of the inverted chevron. And let's make the second part of the inverted chevron. So I'll make forward knots on this yarn, so one forward knot and a second forward knot. I take the next yarn, one forward knot and the second forward knot, like this. And now here in the middle I will create with the yellow yarns one forward knot and the second forward knot, this way. And now I will take the orange yarn and make one forward knot, the second forward knot. I brought the orange yarn on the inside here. I take the other orange yarn, I make one backward knot and the second backward knot. This way, and in the middle I will make one forward knot and the second forward knot. And now I will keep the black yarns on the margin, so I will make a forward knot and then a backward knot with the black yarn. And as you can see, my black yarn is again on the outside. Now I will make a backward knot like this, so my yarn has moved backward here, and then a forward knot, and my yarn has moved on the outside again, like this. So I kept my black yarns on the outside and I started making a margin here. And now let's make a chevron, a yellow chevron. So I will make one and two forward knots like this, one and two backward knots with the yellow yarn, and in the middle I will make one forward knot and the second forward knot like this. Again I will take the black yarn, I'll make a forward knot and a backward knot, and I kept the margin, the black yarn on the margin. Now I make a backward knot and a forward knot, again I keep the black yarn on the margin like this, and I will make another chevron with the orange yarn. So I make one forward knot, the second forward knot, one backward knot, the second backward knot, and here in the middle one forward knot and the second forward knot. And now I will make one forward knot, and this time I will make a second forward knot, so I will no longer make a backward knot. And on the orange yarn I will make one forward knot and a second forward knot, this way. So as you can see, I made forward knots and brought the black yarn to the middle, and with the other black yarn I will make backward knots and bring the yarn to the middle. So one backward knot, the second backward knot, one backward knot, the second backward knot, and I have brought the yarns into the middle. Now I will make two forward knots, and as you can see, I created margins here. Let's see from a closer distance. So I made an inverted chevron here, then I created margins here with the black yarn, and now I created another chevron, and I made 3 chevrons on the inside here. Now let's create 2 dots here with the yellow yarn. So I will make a forward knot and a backward knot with the yellow yarn, and I have created a yellow dot here. Now I'll make a backward knot and a forward knot, now again I will make an inverted chevron. So one backward knot, the other backward knot, one backward knot, the second backward knot, again a forward knot and another forward knot, and on the last yarn a forward knot and another forward knot, this way. And now I will make 2 forward knots with the orange yarn here in the middle to create a dot like this. And I will make a yellow chevron, so one forward knot, the second forward knot, and with the yellow yarn, the other yellow yarn, one backward knot and the second backward knot. And in the middle, one forward knot and a second forward knot. And now I will create the margin, the black margin. So I'll make one forward knot, one backward knot, on the other margin, one backward knot, and a forward knot to create this margin, so to keep the black yarn on the edges. And now I will make an orange chevron, one forward knot, another forward knot, one backward knot, another backward knot, and in the middle two forward knots, one forward knot and a second forward knot, this way. Now I will make one forward knot, and now I will create a chevron, a black chevron here, another forward knot, on the orange yarn one forward knot and another forward knot. With the black yarn I will create one backward knot and a second backward knot, on the orange yarn one backward knot and a second backward knot, and here in the middle one forward knot and a second forward knot. And now I will make another pair of yellow dots, so one forward knot, one backward knot. I made one yellow dot, one backward knot, one forward knot, like this. And now I have created the dots. Now let's again create an inverted black chevron. One and two backward knots, one and two backward knots, one and two forward knots, one and two forward knots, like this. So I made an inverted chevron. And now I will make one and two forward knots, and now I will make one forward knot with the yellow yarn and one backward knot to bring the yellow yarn back to its original position, so that I can make another orange dot in the middle. With the other yellow yarn I will make one backward knot and one forward knot, like this, because this will be the center. We'll make a diamond in the center. And now I will make again one forward knot and another forward knot to create the diamond in the center. And now I will make two forward knots with the black yarn, one and two, this way. On the orange yarn, one and two, one backward knot and 2 backward knots, one backward knot and 2 backward knots, and 1 and 2. So now I have also created the diamond in the middle. Again, let's make 2 dots, yellow dots, a forward and a backward. A backward knot and a forward knot, and as you can see, I have created half of the bracelet, and now all I have to do is create the same design but in the mirror. So again, I will make an inverted chevron, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 forward knot and 2 forward knots, 1 forward knot and 2 forward knots. I have created the inverted chevron, and then I will make this portion, then this portion, and then the inverted chevrons. So let's continue making the design on this side, the mirror design of the design that we made on this side. So the next step would be to create the inverted orange chevron. So I will begin by making a dot in the middle here. So I will make 2 forward knots, and now I will make a backward knot and 2 forward knots on the right side, and I created the orange inverted chevron. Now I will take the black yarn and create the border. So 1 forward knot, 1 backward knot, on the other side 1 backward knot and 1 forward knot, and now I will create the inverted yellow chevron. I will make 1 forward knot and the second forward knot, and I will create 1 backward knot and the second backward knot on the left, and 1 forward knot and the second forward knot on the right, this way, and here in the middle I'll make 2 forward knots, 1 and 2. This way. And now I will make one forward knot and another forward knot on the yellow yarn, a forward knot, and the second forward knot on the orange yarn, a backward knot, and the second backward knot on the yellow yarn, and 2 backward knots on the orange yarn. Now I brought the black yarns to the middle, and I'll make 1 and 2 forward knots like this, and now I have created the same pattern as here. I created the pattern here, and now let's create this other pattern. So first of all I will make 2 yellow dots, so 1 yellow dot, 1 forward knot, sorry, and 1 backward knot, and I have created the first yellow dot here. Then 1 backward knot, and 1 forward knot, and I made the other yellow dot, and again we shall make an inverted chevron, so 1 backward knot, the other backward knot, 1 backward knot, the second backward knot, 1 forward knot, the second forward knot, 1 forward knot, the second forward knot, and now I'll create the inverted chevron. So we have here an orange chevron, so let's make the orange chevron. I'll make 1 forward knot and a second forward knot, 1 backward knot and a second backward knot, 1 forward knot and a second forward knot, so 1 backward knot, 1 forward knot, 1 forward knot, 1 backward knot, now I'll make with the yellow yarn 1 backward knot, a second backward knot, 1 backward knot, a second backward knot, now I have the yellow yarns. I make 2 forward knots, 1 and 2, Now I'll make one forward knot, one backward knot, one backward knot, one forward knot, and with the orange yarns, one backward knot and another backward knot, and one forward knot and a second forward knot, here in the middle I will make one forward knot and a second forward knot, and now I'll make one forward knot with the black yarn, another forward knot, and on the yellow yarn one forward knot and another forward knot, and one backward knot with the black yarn and another backward knot, one backward knot and another backward knot, and here in the middle one forward knot and another forward knot. This way. So as you can see, we only have to make the inverted chevrons here. So we need to make two dots here on the sides, two orange dots. So I'll make one forward knot, one backward knot, so I created this dot, and on this side I will make one backward knot and one forward knot. So we also have created these, so this is the equivalent of this, and these orange dots are these orange dots here. So all we have to do is to make these last chevrons here, and we have finished the bracelet. And now let's make the inverted chevrons. I'll begin with the black chevron. 1 and 2 backward knots. One and 2 backward knots. One and 2 forward knots. One and 2 forward knots. So I created the first inverted chevron. Now I will do the second step, the yellow inverted chevron. 1 and 2 forward knots. One and 2 forward knots, and 1 and 2 forward knots. Now I will make backward knots. These are backward knots. And now I will make forward knots on this other side. 1 forward knot, 2 forward knots, 1 forward knot, and 2 forward knots. Like this. So on the left side I make backward knots in the case of inverted chevrons, and on the right side I make forward knots for the inverted chevrons. Now let's make an inverted orange chevron. Let's make the orange chevron, so I'll make 1 forward knot and the second forward knot. And now on the left side I will make 1 backward knot and the second backward knot, one backward knot and the second backward knot, and 1 forward knot on this side, the second forward knot on this side, one forward knot and another forward knot. This way. Now I have created a third chevron, and now again let's make a black chevron, inverted chevron. So I'll make 1 forward knot, the second forward knot, and on the left I'll make backward knots, so 1 backward knot, the second backward knot, and on the yellow yarn 1 backward knot, the second backward knot, and forward knots on this side, so 1 forward knot, the second forward knot, one forward knot, the second forward knot, now I will make yellow chevron, so 1 forward knot, the second forward knot, one backward knot, the second backward knot, one backward knot, the second backward knot, one forward knot, the second forward knot, and one forward knot, and the second forward knot. Now again I will make an orange inverted chevron, so one forward knot and the second forward knot, and again on the left I will make backward knot, so one backward knot and the second, one backward knot and the second, and on the right I will make forward knots, one forward knot and the second, one forward knot and the second, this way, and the last chevron, the black chevron. So I'll make one forward knot and the second forward knot, then I will make one backward knot and the second, one backward knot and the second. So whenever you make inverted chevrons, on the left you make backward knots, on the right you make forward knots. So let's make the forward knots on the right side. So one forward knot, another forward knot and one forward knot and the last forward knot, like this. Now we have finished the bracelet itself, and now let's create the bracelet tie. So in order to make the bracelet tie, I will take the yarns and I will start braiding them. I'll braid on one side and then I will make a knot at the end of my braiding, and then I will braid the other yarns as well. Now let's also braid the other tie. And then make a knot at the end of the other tie as well. And now I have braided the second tie as well, and I will make a knot here too. I will take the scissors and cut the end of the cord. This way. And now let's see the finished bracelet. So this is the finished bracelet. So we have the chevrons here and the inverted chevrons here, and here we have the diamonds and the chevrons inside of the black borders. And in order to close the bracelet, I will open this tie. I will open the loop, I will put the tie through the loop like this, and I will make a knot. And this is what the bracelet looks like. So this is what the bracelet looks like on the wrist.